Hi everybody, Cory here. So Crystal and I have sat down to go over some of the awesome books that we read during the month of June. We joined each other as per usual on a Zoom call, so let's get into it. Hello! So thank you from in studio Cory to Zoom here. Cory and Crystal. And we're going to be talking about some of the books that we read in June.
June over.
I know, what? So I think we're each going to talk about 4 books. And yeah, we didn't post a June TBR video for whatever reason, but we did film one, and I do have a couple books that were on that video, that you didn't see. Cross my heart. Which is an achievement, because who reads their TBRs?
Yeah, I used the not posting of that video to kind of like veer off my original plans, but right. I actually did read one that was on my TBR, so that's good.
Go us, planners. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Sure, I can start. The first book I read, well, one of the first books I read early on was The Word is Murder by Anthony Horowitz. This is an adult mystery thriller, takes place in London. What I really liked about it is that it's a cross between fiction and like nonfiction. Like Anthony Horowitz is a character in the book as himself, and he talks about things that he's done in real life. Like, you know, he mentions his wife. He talks about a meeting with Spielberg and Peter Jackson about writing the Tintin scripts. But then in the other part, he meets this consulting / private detective that works with the police force, and this detective that he worked with before while writing a British crime TV show, so it's fiction, but this detective I don't think is real, but he really did write a TV show where he talks about talking to this detective. It's a bit of a head spin. But the detective approaches him and is like, I want you to write a book about me. And he's like, well, what makes you interesting? Like, I don't know anything about you. But they end up stumbling onto this like murder case, which involves like a celebrity. And there's just so many references to real life and him as a real person. It's not real. It just really does your head in a little bit. But I listened to the audiobook. It was very good. Very page turny, even though I wasn't actually reading. So I did end up picking up a copy online, and then I got the sequel for later.
There you go.
Yeah. Very good.
Cool. So my first one was one of my most anticipated books. I'm pretty sure it came out this year. And that's Sticks and Scones, Check Please Volume 2 by Ngozi Ukazu. This graphic novel series, it is a webcomic. You can read it all online, but luckily it got published in this form, and I loved Volume 1 so much when I read it. It's just like the most heartwarming story. It is about a young boy named Biddy, and he is like a little southern gentleman, and in high school he was a figure skater, and then when he goes to college he joins the hockey team. He's also a baker, and he's a vlogger, and he's just delightful. He's also gay, and this is just the story of his all through all 4 of his college years being a part of this super accepting and amazing group of people. They all live in the same house. They're also accepting and fun, and it's just lovely. You know, it does delve into more difficult topics, but loved it. And this is the second book, and I will say I didn't think this was going to be the end, so I was really sad because I was like, it's over? Can't we talk about Biddy forever? But this is the second book in which Biddy's boyfriend has joined an NHL hockey team, and he becomes like the first openly gay member of the NHL, I believe. Don't quote me on that, at least on his team for sure. But again, it's just like it's such an accepting and beautiful world, and I love it.
Oh, that's so amazing. I really, really want to read those books. I've heard you say nothing but fantastic things, and I see them all over Instagram, and I feel like I'm missing out.
They're so cute. But yes, once we get into our office, which will be soon, I'll bring this for you.
Awesome. That would be great. Next up for me is I've been reading and watching a lot of Shakespeare lately. I think I may have read 2 or 3 Shakespeare plays this month, but the one I would like to talk about is The Tragedy of Coriolanus. I wanted to read this because the National Theatre was streaming Tom Hiddleston's performance as Coriolanus earlier in the month, and I didn't want to miss it. But I also was like, I should earn it. So I read it in like 4 days, and I have to say it was a challenge. Like, it was really hard to find myself in ancient Rome and be like, yeah, I know what's going on. And then like a iambic pentameter dropped on top of that, being like, what are you talking about? So it was, luckily I found a digital copy that was the Fogler's edition, and they do a really good job about highlighting certain words that you could check up at the end. And because it was digital, you just kind of click it and it takes you, and then you can go back.
Right.
So there was a few things where I was like, oh, that's what you're talking about.
Right.
There were other things where I like prided myself a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought you said. So
nailed it.
I guess watching and reading Shakespeare enough, you kind of can put together his tone. But it was a play and a story I knew very, very little about. Besides, it was about some guy, and it was really violent. But no, it was good, and I'm glad I tackled it.
Nice.
And the production was really well done as well. So to watch.
I definitely feel like Shakespeare is one of those things that if you haven't experienced it in a while, it takes like a play or 2 to get your brain back in that language.
Yeah, and the comedies are easy because, well, I feel that they're easier, not simple. They're a bit easier because they flow so nicely with their words, and they're all about jokes, and it's more about kind of the physical than what's actually going on.
Right.
But this is like, though it's a myth and not a history, I feel it was just like, it was like reading Julius Caesar, which I haven't read since high school and is on my list to reread, because I don't feel, unlike Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet, I don't feel Julius Caesar is one I remember enough to count as being read.
Right.
But yeah, it's just putting yourself in ancient Rome and being like, because it talks about politics and stuff too, and I'm like, I don't know anything about politics.
Yeah.
But yeah,
cool.
It was good. I liked it in the end.
So my next one is an adult title, and that is The Dutch House by Anne Patchett. I dislike this cover greatly, but it is very important to the story. This book, my buddy read with a friend, honestly expecting not to like it, because it looks boring, right? It looks boring. And it's about a boy named Danny and his sister Maeve, and they grew up in this place called the Dutch House. It's this very weird, very big house with like floor-to-ceiling windows, like you can see in one side of the house and out the other, and it's kind of this fabled house, basically. And when their family bought it, everything from the house, like all the possessions in the house, came with the house. So like all the paintings and the crockery and like everything, like jewelry, everything was in the house when they bought the house.
Weird.
They grow up in this like weird house, and at the beginning of the story, their mother leaves them, and their dad marries a woman who they clearly see she marries him because she wants the Dutch house, basically. And then it's just the story of these 2 siblings from 6 years old to their old age, and how their lives has been shaped around this house. Again, sounds kind of boring, but Anne Patchett is such a great writer that I just cared about these characters so much. And I cared that through their lives, they would come back together, and no matter what was happening, they would come back together, and they would just drive and sit in front of the Dutch house and be like, we used to live there. And I wonder what's happening there. It's fantastic. I don't know, like it's hard. It's a hard book to explain. But if you like literary fiction, I found when I was reading it, it was a case of, I want to read more. Like when I finished it and I was reading it with my friend, I was like, that was lovely. Like that was a lovely story. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's all I can say about it. It's a hard one to explain, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think if you try some literary fiction, this one's really good. I found it, like, I zipped through it in just a couple days, so it was good. Yeah.
I like books where you really enjoy and like really stay with you, but you can't for the life of you explain why you like it to people.
Yeah,
like you just have to read it, and then
like it's a quiet book. Like it's not action packed, but it was great. Yeah, I liked it.
Next up for me is one that was actually on my TBR, and that is In Real Life, a graphic novel by Cory Doctorow and Jen Wang. This was one where it was like super late at night, and I'm like, I should be sleeping, like go to bed. So I picked it up just to give it a start, and then I just read the whole thing and was up even later than I should have been. But it was really good. It was really hard to put down. I enjoyed the characters a lot. The color palette is just perhaps one of my favorite things about it. But it's the story of this girl who, she goes to like a class seminar guest speaker kind of thing at her school, and this woman plays like, she runs a guild in an MMO, a multiplayer, something. Massive multiplayer online game, and I forget those words out. So she kind of joins this guild, and she meets this other girl, and they go off kind of hunting gold farmers. So there's people in the gaming world who just like go out there and, you know, pick cabbages to earn money, and then they sell that to rich people who don't want to do things for themselves, but they want to have like amazing characters. My understanding anyway. I've never actually played a MMO, but she ends up meeting this guy that she's out to kill his character because he's a gold farmer, and he's like, no, come on. And she ends up kind of becoming friends with him and finds out that he lives in China, and he just spends his workday, the 12-hour workday, in a room with a bunch of other gold farmers, and that's just the only way they're able to make money. So even though his job is kind of like frowned upon in the gaming world, it's like, it's his living, and she slowly realizes that things aren't the same everywhere, and she just starts to understand a little bit more, and he ends up telling her that, like, you know, he has this back problem where he's been sick, or he needs, you know, medical attention would be nice. And her dad's company, I'm assuming in the US, where he's going through kind of like the same thing, and it's like, oh, you should talk to your coworkers and go on strike or something, or like talk about it. And he ends up doing that, but just getting fired, and then he knows nothing. So she kind of wants to find him again and help him, and then they like band together, and there's this big like it's just so good at the end, you just can't stop reading. But it's just a nice little insight into that world and into just globalization in general, and how technology brings us all together, but it doesn't really make our lives the same. We're all doing different things. Yeah, I liked it a lot. And it was a Christmas present from Karina, and I trust her judgment, and it delivered.
Yeah, it's fun in some ways, and also very serious in other ways. But
like you felt so bad for him, and but also just understood like the girl in it, I forget her name. She when she meets this other guild member that she goes off like hunting gold farmers with, when she learns that maybe what they're doing is bad, it's kind of hard to like stand up to a new friend you've just made, because you don't want to be that person, but you also are like, no, this is like wrong, we shouldn't be doing this. So there was a lot to take in reading it as well, but I liked it a lot. It was good.
My next one is another one that was on my TBR, and that is Little and Lion by Brandy Colbert. I've been meaning to read this book for years, whenever it came out, and I really liked it. It's another sibling book, but this one is less serious than the Dutch House. It's about siblings. Is that? Why not? it's about siblings Suzette and Lionel, and you find out, previous to this book starting, that Lionel has been diagnosed with a fairly severe form of bipolar disorder. And her parents decide that they're going to send Suzette away so that she doesn't have to deal with coming to, like, adjusting to this new way of. And Suzette and Lionel are also step siblings, but they very much view each other as, like, they are their brother and sister. Like, they are very, like, they love each other, they are there for each other, they are not just step siblings, they are siblings. In the beginning of the book, Suzette has come home from this boarding school and is now kind of experiencing Lionel for the first time as this new, like, a different, has growth, and a lot of change has happened since she's been away. It definitely is a wonderful examination of siblings. I will say my experience with siblings were not like this. But, and then a new girl comes to town, and both Lionel and Suzette end up falling for her, which is, a problem. But I loved it. It was a great, like, it had these really great conversations about mental health and, taking medication and therapy and all of these different things, and, like, those dark moments, but it also just had so much friendship moments in there too that I loved. It's a really quick read. Pick it up if you haven't already. I think it's a great summer read, but it also has more than, it's not just fluff. Like, there's some more going on in there, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll do it.
Nice. Yeah, that's been on my radar for a long time too. Basically because I think the cover always stood out so much, and I'm like, I should read that. I have not. Last up for me is some more Shakespeare, and a Christmas present from Cori herself, and that is Romeo and/or Juliet by Ryan North. I really don't know why I just randomly picked this up one day and was like, oh, I'll give it a shot. And then, like, that was like 2 or 3 days of my life just like hilarious. So this is for anybody who doesn't know, this is a choosable path adventure. So it's like a choose your own adventure, and you could choose to be Romeo or Juliet. There's nice handy little heart icons for each choice, so you can follow the actual story of Romeo and Juliet, not in iambic pentameter. Its language is very, very funny and very, very direct about 2 teens who are like, we're gonna sleep together tonight, isn't that great? I went off course early on a few times and died very quickly. Not even died, just my story was over very fast based on the decisions that I made. So I decided to start from the beginning again and follow all the hearts through the path. And sometimes I'd get to a point where I'd want to veer off story. So I would save my place, I would go on the tangent, and then when that got weird, I would just go back to where I was. What I really liked about it, for other Shakespeare lovers, is there's a little, like, off-track short story event with Pyramus and Thisbe from Midsummer Night's Dream. And I think there's a little Macbeth side story in here, which I haven't read, but I think I'm going to read Macbeth first. I'd probably appreciate it a little bit more. But there's this side quest where the Juliet's nurse has to go tell Romeo, hey, it's totally good to get married this afternoon. But there's one of the choices where you could do, like, an old 8-bit computer game side quest. So I took that, and it was really hard because you have to, like, solve these puzzles and figure out which choice is the correct choice to take you off. And I was flipping back and forth so many times. I kept getting it wrong. I kept making the wrong thing. I was like, I don't want to solve puzzles. Just tell me where to go. So that was, like, at least an hour of my time being like, I don't know what's happening. But it was all worth it. It was very, very funny. And he did one for Hamlet as well called To Be or Not to Be. And I definitely want to pick it up and give it a try because Hamlet is also a great story. And I can only imagine the options you would have to take in something like that. So
that's also illustrated by Noelle Stevenson, who did Nimona.
Sorry?
He's illustrated by Noelle Stevenson, who's Nimona.
Interesting.
So my last one is one I finished. And that is Ragged Company by Richard Wagamese. This is a book I picked up at a little free library by my house. Literally never heard of it. Didn't know what it was about. I've heard of Richard Wagamese. I had never read any of his stuff. He's an Indigenous author. Picked it up. Decided, I was talking to my friend, actually the same friend that I read The Dutch House with. We pretty much consistently buddy read a book together. And she's like, do you have anything you want to read? And I'm like, well, how about this one? And so we both picked it up, not knowing anything about it, and we both agree it's probably one of the best books we've ever read.
Oh. High praise for you.
Yeah, it is an adult novel. It is very, very difficult. It does not shy away from many, many horrifying things, so be warned. So, like, the first chapter in and of itself has at least 3 or 4 deaths.
Oh.
But basically, it is a group of 4 homeless people. For some reason, I thought they were on the streets of Toronto, but they're not. I think it's an unnamed city. Brain, it was Toronto. But it's a group of 4 homeless people who, there's a cold snap, and they decide to put their change together, and they're going to go see a movie to escape the cold. In this movie theater, they meet a man named Granite, and over the course of the next several months, they keep running into this man named Granite, and they end up becoming friends with him. And he's like a retired journalist. And then one day, one of these homeless people finds a lottery ticket that ends up being worth over $13 million. But when they take it to the lottery office to try to, cash it, turn it in, none of them have ID, so they can't. You need an address to be able to do this. So they ask Granite to help them. And the kind of the story goes from there. And it's just a story of these 4 people from, living on the street. They now have all this wealth, but that doesn't erase who you were before. All 4 of them each have paths that they've never reconciled with. And they slowly start reconciling with their paths and sharing, because they never even it was kind of like the code that you didn't share before you were on the street. It doesn't matter, you're here now. So these 4 found family just kind of coming together, and with Granite too coming in as being another character who's not understanding where they've come from and the trust issues that come with that. I don't often cry when I read books. It's rare, once in a while I'll tear up, but I don't cry. Unless it's an animal occasionally. But I cried for the last 50 pages of this book.
Wow.
Actually 50. And it is a book that's so full of hope, though. I can't sing praises enough for a book that I'd literally never heard of. I will be reading more by Richard Wagamese. You bet. He actually lives in Kamloops, British Columbia, apparently. But it's fantastic. I love it. Recommend.
I love books that you've heard absolutely nothing about, which just end up being so, I don't know, they stick with you, even though I read this book years ago called Blue Moon Circus. I just bought it because it was $2.99 on my Kobo, and it sounded interesting, and it was fantastic. It was just such a beautiful book, and I'm so glad I just played roulette.
Yeah, and I think especially working in the industry that we work in now, our lives are books, so it's quite rare for not rare, but unusual for me to just find a book and be like, I've never heard of that, I'm gonna pick it up.
Yeah.
So yeah. was
And I
very
think especially like you more than me, because you're such a big reader and you've been reading for so long. And you read so many books in 1 year that when you're like, I've never heard of something, I was like, really?
yeah, so
It's a gem.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was our 4 books. I think I'm gonna throw it back to Cory in, well, the studio, the space that I'm currently in.
We're gonna have a studio soon.
Yeah, oh gosh, thank goodness.
I'm really excited for that.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, bye.
Alright, so those were some of the books that we read and loved in the month of June. Let us know what books you read this month that you were absolutely in love with in the comments down below. And if you like this video, please get a big thumbs up and subscribe for more. Happy reading and thanks for being awesome.